FedEx founder, chairman, and CEO Frederick W. Smith is one of the great business icons of the 20th and now the 21st century. To me, though, he is not just the maverick whose tenacity has become the stuff of business school legend, or the brilliant strategist who has guided the company since its inception. To commemorate the 40th anniversary of FedEx, I have the privilege of interviewing the greatest friend, teacher, and supporter I have ever known. Dad, thank you for taking the time to do this interview with me. I can tell you didn't make the coffee this morning. It doesn't have its usual bite when you make it, but it's good nonetheless.
No, I think Mom did it today.
Well, in this interview, I'll try not to cover ground that's been covered so many times before and give some insight into some different things, maybe some unheralded things from the history of FedEx. I do want to start with a question about the beginnings of Federal Express, as it was then called. It's a well-known fact that you are very involved in public affairs today, but I don't think everyone realizes just how important your involvement in regulatory affairs has been since the very beginning of the company. Can you maybe elaborate on that a bit?
Well, you know, Richard, it is the untold story about FedEx, because when we started, virtually nothing that we do today was permissible under the laws that existed at the time. For starters, the first thing we were involved in was to change the regulations that permitted you to fly small airplanes without economic regulation by the federal government. And then after that, we were heavily involved in the deregulation of air cargo in 1977, the deregulation of surface transportation by the federal government in 1980, and then finally, all through the decades of the 90s and the first part of this century, we were involved in liberalizing the heavily regulated global airline industry. And absent all of those things, we could have never done what we did. And it's had profound effects on the economy of the world and the United States. I'll give you one statistic here that's very important. Logistics cost as a percentage of GDP were about 14 and maybe even 14.5% before all this started. Now they're less than 9%.
Wow.
Huge productivity improvements, great
Absolutely.
wealth improvements. In China today, for example, they're at 20%.
Moving on to the next question, you've said on numerous occasions that our greatest asset at FedEx is our people. And obviously our PSP philosophy is something that's really core to our success. Where did this philosophy come from, and was it really a part of the culture of FedEx from day one?
It was absolutely a key, and I think it in part came from my service in the Marine Corps, which emphasizes leadership principles, but much more importantly, it was the recognition that in a high-performance service organization, it's not the people at the top that are the most important folks in the equation, it's the customer service people. So you almost have to think of it as an inverted pyramid.
Sure, absolutely.
So the frontline teammates are the ones that need to be highly motivated to deliver that impeccable service. So people service profit is as important to the success of FedEx as any other thing that we did in the early days.
I know you've often mentioned how important information technology is to the company's future success and direction. But just how big a role has it played in our past, and when did you and others at FedEx first start to see the advantages of IT?
We realized relatively early that we had to be as close to perfect in the delivery of our services as humanly possible. It became quickly apparent to everyone that with the importance of the type of commerce we were carrying, these critical items, we had to keep up with every one of them in a custodial fashion. So that led us to developing the package tracking system that today is taken for granted by everyone. Right. But in those days, it didn't exist, and it required us to create a whole new set of technologies to be able to keep up with each and every item discreetly, just as if we were putting it under our arms and carrying it individually. It was that recognition that led us into the type of extreme focus on information technologies, and we've had outstanding CIOs from the very start of the company.
How about our quality management system and its importance in shaping the FedEx that we know today? Will you talk a little bit about that?
Similar to the information technology focus, we also recognized relatively early that there was an enormous revolution underway in management. After World War II, the Japanese actually picked up the quality management techniques that had been developed by the U.S. defense industries. So we adopted those quality management methodologies for the simple reason that our customers demanded impeccable quality, and the methods showed that improved quality not only increased customer satisfaction and prevented lost customers, but it reduced costs.
And we've seen that today with some great QDM efforts that have
fantastic.
yielded incredible cost-saving results.
It is, and the QDM system that we have today, which is in every corner of FedEx, is essential to the management of the company, because again, just as predicted, quality is free because it makes the customers happy and it lowers the cost and it makes people's ability to do their work easier.
Well, now we're going to go into something I like to call the lightning round here. I'll say something, an anecdote or myth or what have you from the early days of FedEx, and you can simply respond with fact or fiction. You ready?
Ready.
All right. You got a mediocre grade on the college term paper where you outlined the idea for a hub and spokes based transportation system.
That's hard to answer in one word. It's quite exaggerated. There's some truth to it. I answered a reporter's story one time about where the idea for FedEx, where did it come from? And I said, well, it came from a term paper, and he kept pressing me on what grade I made, and I said, well, I guess I got my usual C. And that became the stuff of legend. It's true up to a point, but the overall story is a bit more complicated.
Well, I know your time in the U.S. Marine Corps helped you sharpen that idea that eventually became FedEx and the hub and spokes based integrated air-ground transportation system. But it also instilled in you many of the leadership tenets and principles that still guide you and the company today. Fact or fiction?
Oh, absolute fact. I think my service in the Marine Corps was one of the most important things that happened to me in my life, and it was very profound as it relates to FedEx, because the Marine Corps, and for that matter the U.S. military in general, is the greatest teacher of leadership principles in the world. And in fact, our management school, not by accident, is called the Leadership Institute, because the first and most important thing that we have to establish in every one of our first line and second line managers is that they can be effective leaders, because in the service industries like we're in, it requires you to withdraw that discretionary effort every day to achieve, as we now call it, the Purple Promise. I will make every FedEx experience outstanding.
Well, any Marines who watch this probably will give that answer a big Semper Fi. And you notice I say Marines, not former Marines.
Yeah,
once a Marine, always a Marine.
Of course.
FedEx was an absolutely positively overnight success from the beginning.
Well, that's false, but there's a big asterisk there. I think FedEx would have been an overnight success, except for the first Arab oil embargo in 1973.
Gives you a lot of perspective on that as well, having gone through some previous oil shocks, including this one in the infancy of FedEx.
It does, and we participate in this Energy Security Leadership Council, which has been very effective in Washington in trying to maximize U.S. oil and gas production while at the same time conserving as much as possible through fuel efficiency standards and alternate technologies. And it all stems from that early experience in 1973, where we were almost killed in the cradle.
Well, continuing with our lightning round here, the first night of operation in April of 1973, you had so few packages you sorted them on a card table.
That's true, and in fact, a little known story is there were actually two start dates. The first start date in March was so abysmal, we stopped and put it off into April, regrouped. And I think maybe it would have taken a relatively large table to sort them, but they could have been sorted on one table. I think it was 180 some odd shipments.
You once went to Las Vegas and played blackjack in order to make enough money to keep the company afloat in the early days.
True, up to a point. I did win some money at blackjack in Las Vegas. 2 years in Vietnam, we played a lot of poker and a lot of blackjack, and in those days you only had one deck. So if you knew how to play, it was easier to win. That part's true. The part that's false is that it saved the company. Quite frankly, at the time, we owed so much more money than I won at blackjack that night. It wasn't even close, but it was a drop in the bucket. But it was perhaps a sign, an optimistic signal.
All right, wrapping this up, you've seen a lot over the 40-year history of FedEx, and we've talked quite a bit about the past, but I know you really like to talk about the future more than the past. So what do you think the coming decades might have in store for a relatively young FedExer in their 30s like myself, or someone even younger who's just starting their career at the company?
Rich, I think the prospects for FedEx are phenomenal. I'm very proud of the things we've accomplished in the past. I'm deeply grateful to all of the tens of thousands of men and women that built FedEx, and it has truly been a team effort. But as I'm fond of saying, you ain't seen nothing yet. The size and scope of FedEx today is almost impossible to duplicate. And as a consequence, the economic growth that will come in the years ahead will propel FedEx to even bigger heights and greater opportunity for our teammates and our share owners. So I'm very optimistic about the future. We've got all of the pieces in place to be a very successful company, as far into the future as one wants to look. So my only regret is at age 69, I won't see, or coming up on 69, I won't be there to see the next 40 years, I don't presume, but it's going to be exciting.
Well, speaking of the future, I thought we'd close with a video clip of some potential future FedEx teammates playing on their favorite exhibit at the Children's Museum here in town. See if you see anyone you recognize over there.
I think they'd be great FedExers, no question about it. Good loaders too. Great density there.
So the FedEx future is indeed bright. And on behalf of our more than 300,000 global team members, we'd like to wish everyone a happy 40th anniversary.
Happy 40th FedEx.
Buon 40esimo FedEx.
ಶುಭಾಶಯಗಳು 40ನೇ ವರ್ಷ FedExಗೆ.
Herzlichen Glückwunsch zum 40. FedEx.
FedEx India Delhi की तरफ से 40 साल मुबारक हो. Yay!
Let me express my personal appreciation to each and every one of the 300,000 plus FedEx teammates for the outstanding job you do every day in helping us keep our purple promise. Happy anniversary.